When one of the most powerful men in the world walked up to a gate and expected it to open, it didn't. It was 9:14 in the morning. The Nevada sun was already baking the asphalt. 4 black SUVs had just pulled off the highway and rolled down a long, dusty road toward the Hartwell facility, a federal building most people had never heard of and would never think about again. Elon Musk stepped out of the second vehicle. He wasn't dressed up. He didn't slow down. He walked the way he always walked, fast forward, like the world had already agreed to get out of his way. But one man hadn't gotten the message. Standing at the gate, alone, calm, and completely still, was a small man in a gray jacket. No security team, no backup, just a badge, a lanyard, and 22 years of quiet, careful work that nobody had ever noticed. His name was Delroy Fitch, and when Elon reached the gate, Delroy looked him in the eye and said 4 simple words: "You cannot. I will enter here." The parking lot went silent. Cameras leaned in. A young journalist named Petra, who had driven 4 hours on a hunch and turned on her phone live stream for an audience of 300 people, stopped breathing. Elon stopped walking. He looked at Delroy the way you look at something that shouldn't be there. Then he straightened up, looked Delroy dead in the eyes, and said 3 words back. 3 words that the entire world would hear before the day was over. 3 words that got Delroy Fitch fired before noon. But here is what 12 million people missed when they watched that clip. What the news anchors missed, what the opinion writers missed, what even Petra herself almost missed when she rewatched her own footage at 11 o'clock that night. Alone at her kitchen table, frame by frame, with the screen so close to her face she could feel the heat of it. Something was happening in the background. While every single camera in that parking lot was pointed at Elon Musk and one small man in a gray jacket, men were moving, quietly, quickly, loading boxes into unmarked trucks through a side door of the facility. Filing boxes, the kind that hold documents, the kind that once they're gone, are very hard to prove ever existed. And buried inside those files were 2 names that nobody outside that building was supposed to ever know. Marcus Webb, 34 years old, a father, Inez Sandoval, 41 years old, a mother of 3, both dead, both ruled as accidents. And both, as Delroy Fitch had known for 8 months, had filed reports about for 8 months, had been ignored about for 8 months. Anything but accidental. Delroy didn't just stand at that gate to be difficult. He didn't stand there because he didn't know who Elon Musk was. He stood there because he had run out of every other option, and because he had finally figured out the one move that no one could silence. A move so public, so visible, so impossible to bury that it would force the truth out into the open, whether Raymond Holt wanted it there or not. But what nobody knew, not Elon, not Petra, not the 12 million people watching, was that Delroy had one more card in his jacket pocket that morning. Something small, something quiet, something that would turn 3 words spoken in impatience into the most important piece of evidence in a federal investigation. What was it? Watch the whole video. Because what Delroy had in that pocket, and what those 3 words actually cost, and what happened to the 2 families who spent over a year being told a lie about how their loved ones died, that is the story. And it doesn't end the way anyone expected. 9:14 a.m. The desert had already been hot for 2 hours, in the kind of heat that rose off the asphalt in slow, wavy lines and made the air look like it was dreaming. Out on Route 9, past the truck stops and the last gas station for 40 miles, a convoy of black vehicles turned off the highway and began rolling down a long, unpaved road toward a chain-link fence. The fence stretched in both directions as far as you could see. On one side of it, the outside world. On the other side, the Hartwell Regional Manufacturing Hub, a sprawling, flat-roofed facility in the Nevada desert that inspected and approved parts for federal construction projects. It was not a famous place. Most people had never heard of it. It did not make the news. It did not make anything, really. It just made sure other things were made correctly. Today, that was about to change. Petra Okafor had been sitting on the hood of her old blue Honda since 8:40 a.m., eating a gas station granola bar and waiting for something to happen. So she was 27 years old, freelance, and running on 4 hours of sleep and a very large coffee. She had her phone mounted on a small tripod she had duct taped to her side mirror. She was already live streaming. Her viewer count read 312. 312 people, she had thought when she checked. Every one of them probably expecting something to actually happen. Something was happening now. She slid off the hood and grabbed the phone the moment she heard the engines. She had been a journalist long enough to know the sound of important vehicles. The particular low hum of motorcades, of people who traveled in groups because they could afford not to travel alone. 4 black SUVs, no flags, no markings. But when the second one stopped and the door opened, she recognized him immediately. Elon Musk stepped out into the Nevada heat. He was wearing dark jeans and a plain jacket, which is what he usually wore. And he walked the way he usually walked. Fast and forward, like his body had already decided where it was going, and his mind was just catching up. 2 men in dark jackets fell into step beside him. Ahead, 50 feet away, the main gate of the Hartwell facility waited, and in front of the gate stood one man. Delroy Fitch was not a man who took up a lot of space. He was 5'9" on a good day. He had a round face, dark-rimmed glasses, and the kind of neat, quiet appearance that said nothing about him except that he had been doing the same careful job for a very long time. His badge was clipped to his jacket. His hands were at his sides. He stood exactly in the center of the gate entrance, which meant that to get through it, you would have to go around him, or through him. He was not moving. Petra swung her phone toward him. Behind her ear, she heard her viewer count tick upward. 400, 500, upper climbing fast as people shared the stream. She held her breath. She did not know who this man was yet. She did not know his name, or his history, or the folder on his kitchen table with 2 names written on the cover. She only knew that he was standing in front of Elon Musk and was not stepping aside, and that this was the kind of moment that could go very wrong or very right, and that she needed to keep her phone completely still. "You cannot enter," Delroy said. His voice was not loud, and it did not shake. It landed in the dry air with a kind of flat, simple weight. The voice of a man who had already decided what he was going to say days ago, and had practiced it enough times that there was nothing nervous left in it. Elon stopped. He looked at Delroy. There was a brief pause, the kind of pause a busy person gives to an unexpected obstacle, a flicker of recalibration. "I have federal authorization," he said. "I'm here for a scheduled efficiency review. Well, you should have received the paperwork." "The facility is under an internal compliance review," Delroy said. "I cannot allow entry until that review is complete. This is standard procedure under Section 14 of the Federal Facility Access Protocol." Another pause, longer this time. Around Petra, the cluster of local reporters had gone very still. 2 of Elon's security team had moved slightly forward, but stopped. A worker on the other side of the fence had paused with a clipboard in his hand and was watching. Nobody spoke. The heat pressed down on all of them like a hand. Elon looked at Delroy the way you look at something that should not be there. Not angry yet, but close to it. He looked at the badge. He looked at the gate. He looked back at Delroy. Then he said 3 words: "Move or resign." The silence that followed was total. Petra's phone had captured it all. At the 2:17 mark of her stream, which she did not know yet would be watched 11 million times, Delroy Fitch looked at Elon Musk with the quiet, unmoving expression of a man who had already made his peace with what was coming. He did not blink. He did not step back. He did not speak. He simply stayed. In the back of his mind, something small and steady said, "Good. Now they're watching." By 11:47 a.m., Delroy had been escorted from the building. A termination letter was in his hand. His badge was in a plastic bag on Gerald Tibbs's desk. 22 years of careful, quiet, invisible work. Done. By 2 p.m., the clip had 12 million views. News channels were running it on a loop. Opinion writers were already filing hot takes. The 3 words were on t-shirts by evening. People who had never heard of the Hartwell facility were debating, loudly and without enough information, whether Delroy Fitch was a hero or a fool. And at 11:03 p.m., Ada alone in her apartment with her laptop open and her coffee cold, Petra Okafor was rewatching her own footage frame by frame, not because of Delroy and not because of the 3 words, but because of something she had noticed in the background of the clip. Something at the far edge of the parking lot, something moving, something that changed everything. You want to know who Delroy Fitch was? He was the man who checked the thing nobody else wanted to check. Nadia Fitch interview was 4 months later. There is a kind of person who notices when something is wrong before anyone else does. They are rarely celebrated for it. They do not show up in history books, and they do not get their names on buildings. What they get mostly is ignored. And then, if they are unlucky, they get to watch the thing they warned about happen anyway, right on schedule, while the people who ignored them look the other way. Delroy Fitch had been this kind of person his entire life. He grew up in Reno, the second of 3 children raised by a mechanic father named Rupert and a school lunch cook named Cecile. They were not a wealthy family, but they were a careful one. Rupert fixed engines with his hands and taught Delroy that machines did not lie. Only the people who managed them did. Cecile fed hundreds of children every day and taught Delroy that when you were responsible for other people's safety, even in a small way, you took it seriously. You did not cut corners. Corners were where accidents lived. Delroy was a quiet child, not shy, quiet. There is a difference. He listened more than he spoke. In class, he was the student who read the footnotes. At home, he was the kid who noticed the crack forming in the driveway before anyone else saw it, who pointed out that the second-floor window latch had not been working right since November. His younger sister Rochelle once told him, when they were teenagers, that he was the most boring person she had ever met. "You just wait," he had said. She still teased him about that. She stopped when the Hartwell story broke. He got into compliance work the year he turned 29, after a chemical plant fire in a town called Elko that killed 3 men and injured 9 others. Delroy had known one of those men, not well, just by sight, a big-armed guy named Vernon who used to wave from the chain-link fence of the plant when Delroy drove past on his morning commute. As the official report said it was an electrical fault, Delroy had read the report 3 times. Then he had found the maintenance logs from the preceding year. Public record, barely organized, stuffed into a county filing system that nobody ever looked at. And he had discovered that the electrical fault had been noted, flagged, and scheduled for repair 7 months before the fire. The repair order had been deferred twice, then quietly dropped. 3 men died because of a form that nobody followed up on. Delroy applied to the Department of Infrastructure Compliance the following spring. He was 29 years old, he had a degree in industrial safety management, and he had a very clear idea of why the work mattered. He would spend the next 22 years doing it. He was not a man who needed praise. His co-workers at the department called him thorough, which they meant as a neutral word, but which he took as a compliment. His supervisor, Gerald Tibbs, called him the most reliable person in the office, and also occasionally the most exhausting. Delroy, Gerald had told him once, over bad coffee in the break room, "You have to learn when enough is enough. Not every discrepancy is a disaster waiting to happen." "Some of them are," Delroy had said. "The hard part is figuring out which ones." Gerald had looked at him for a moment and then refilled his coffee and walked away, which was the kind of response Delroy had grown used to. His daughter Nadia was the one person who truly understood him. She was 26 now, in her second year of law school in Seattle, sharp and quick and funny in the way that children sometimes are when they grow up watching a quiet parent do difficult work without complaint. She called him every Sunday morning, always before 10, so she was the one who had given him the mug that said, "Most likely to be right about something nobody else wants to hear about." He used it every day. The trouble at Hartwell had started 8 months before the confrontation at the gate, on a Wednesday in October when Delroy was reviewing a routine batch of safety inspection logs submitted by the facility. Something was off. Not dramatically off, not the kind of thing that jumped out and grabbed you. It was subtle, a timestamp that did not quite match. An incident report filed 2 days after the date on which the incident had occurred. A maintenance completion form signed by a supervisor who, according to the facility's own shift records, had not been on site that day. Delroy flagged it. He submitted a formal notice of discrepancy to his supervisor. Gerald reviewed it, forwarded it upward, and 3 weeks later told Delroy that the facility had provided clarification and the matter was resolved. As Delroy asked to see the clarification, he was told it was in the file. He found the file. The clarification was 4 lines long and explained nothing. He kept digging. Over the next 6 months, he found 2 names buried in the incident history of the Hartwell facility. The first was Marcus Webb, 34 years old, a floor worker who had died in what was ruled a crane accident 11 months prior. The second was Inez Sandoval, 41, a materials technician who had died in what was ruled a slip-and-fall accident 5 months after Marcus. 2 deaths, 2 accident rulings, and 2 sets of safety records that, when Delroy compared the originals to the filed versions, did not match. Someone had changed the documents after the fact, carefully, quietly, with the confidence of a person who did not believe anyone would ever look closely enough to notice. Delroy had looked closely enough. He submitted a formal concern to the Inspector General's office in December. He did not hear back. He sent a follow-up in January. He received an automated acknowledgement. He called in February. He was told his concern was under review. In March, Raymond Holt, the facility director at Hartwell, a man Delroy had never spoken to in person, called him directly. The call lasted 11 minutes. Holt had a soft voice and careful words, the kind of voice that knew how to be polite without being warm. "Mr. Fitch," Holt said, "we appreciate the thoroughness of your office. Hartwell takes compliance very seriously, but I want to make sure we're not drawing conclusions from incomplete data. These records have been reviewed internally, and we're confident in their accuracy. I have the original digital backups," Delroy said. "The timestamps are different from the filed versions." A pause. "I'd encourage you to make sure your sources are reliable before making that kind of claim officially," Holt said. "I say that as a friend." Delroy was not his friend. He said thank you and hung up and sat in his car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, with his hands very still on the steering wheel. He was not angry. He was something colder than angry. He was certain. The announcement about the Federal Efficiency Inspection Tour came in the second week of April. Elon Musk would be visiting a list of federal and federally linked facilities across 6 states. Hartwell was on the list. Delroy read the announcement 3 times. Then he sat at his kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee in his folder, the one marked with 2 names, and he thought about something that had been bothering him since Holt's phone call in March. Holt would know. People like Holt always found out about things like this. He would know the inspection was coming in and he would have time to prepare. And preparing, for a man like Holt, meant making sure the wrong things were not visible when the right people arrived. Unless there was no time. Unless something happened at the gate, something loud, something public, something that every camera in the parking lot would point at, while quieter things happened behind it. Unless somebody made a scene so big that the scene itself became the story. Delroy looked at the folder. When he thought about Marcus Webb's son, who was 7 years old and in 1st grade, and growing up with a lie sitting inside his father's death like a splinter. He thought about Nadia's mug. Then he picked up his phone and called a woman named Celeste Dre, a labor attorney whose number he had kept in his contacts for 4 years without ever using it. It was 11:30 at night. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Ms. Dre," he said, "I need to ask you something about wrongful termination." "Hypothetically," there was a brief pause. "Mr. Fitch," she said slowly, "how hypothetical are we talking?" Delroy looked at the folder on his table, at the 2 names on the cover. "Not very," he said. "Every big story starts the same way. Someone shows up somewhere they weren't expected and pays attention to something everyone else walked past. From Petra Okafor's audio series, 2 names, Marcus and Inez, Episode 1. Petra Okafor had not planned to be at Hartwell that morning. That is the part she told in every interview afterward, and the part that people found hardest to believe, because it looked from the outside like she had known exactly where to be. But the truth was simpler and stranger than that. The truth was a text message from an old woman named Bette Marsh, sent at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks before the confrontation. "Something is wrong at Hartwell. Somebody's been asking questions from the inside. Pay attention." That was all. No follow-up. And no explanation. Bette was a retired records clerk who had worked for 40 years in the federal building downtown, and she had a particular skill, developed over 4 decades of watching bureaucracies run, for knowing when something was being covered up. She did not explain how she knew things. She just knew them, and when she texted Petra, it meant she had seen something she could not unsee. Petra had driven out to Hartwell twice after that message. Both times, nothing. A flat-roofed building behind a chain-link fence. A bored security guard who told her to move along. The particular thick silence of a place that does not want to be looked at. She had almost given up on it. Petra was 27 years old and had been a journalist since she was 22, which meant she had been one long enough to love it and short enough to still be surprised when it hurt. She had started at a local paper in Sacramento that folded 14 months after she joined. Then a digital outlet that pivoted to video. Then a regional magazine that let her go during a restructuring. She was freelance now, which was a word that sounded free but felt, most of the time, like falling slowly. She was good at her job. She had a gift for talking to people, for making them feel in the first 5 minutes of a conversation that she was the one person in the world who genuinely wanted to hear what they had to say. She had broken 2 small local stories that mattered. She had filed a piece about a water contamination issue in a farm county that got picked up by a national outlet and got her a brief, dizzying taste of what it felt like to be read by more than 2,000 people. She wanted more of that, not for fame, or not only for fame, because she believed in the way that only people who chose underpaid, unstable work believe in things, that stories like the water piece actually change something, that the right words in the right order, published at the right moment, could shift the weight of a situation that had been leaning the wrong way for too long. She just needed to find the next one. When the inspection tour list leaked online and she saw Hartwell on it, she thought of Bet's text. She set her alarm for 5 in the morning and drove out before sunrise with a thermos of coffee, her camera bag, and a duct-taped phone tripod she had been meaning to replace for 6 months. She had been live for 40 minutes when the motorcade arrived. 312 viewers. She had checked, and the smallness of the number had made her feel the specific loneliness of a person doing something that might matter to no one. Then Elon Musk stepped out of the second vehicle, and within 90 seconds, her viewer count was climbing so fast she stopped watching it. She held her phone steady with both hands and breathed through her nose and got every second of it. The walk to the gate, the small man in the gray jacket who was already standing there, the brief exchange of words she could barely hear from her position, and then the 3 words, which she heard perfectly, because by that point the entire parking lot had gone quiet enough to hear them. Move, or resign. She kept filming when the security team arrived. She kept filming when Delroy was escorted inside. She kept the stream going for 22 minutes after the confrontation ended, until the motorcade had left and the parking lot had mostly emptied, and she was standing alone by her car with her arm tired and her heart going fast. By then, she had 400,000 viewers. By the time she drove home, it was 1.2 million. She could not sleep. She tried at 9:30. She lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and felt the particular wide-awake energy of a person who has been present for something significant and cannot stop replaying it. She kept thinking about the man in the gray jacket, about the way he had stood there, about the fact that he had known exactly what he was doing and had done it anyway. At 10:45, she gave up on sleep, made herself a cup of tea she did not drink, and opened her laptop. She watched her own footage from the beginning. She was not sure what she was looking for. She watched it once through and saw what everyone else had seen. The confrontation, the 3 words, the crowd's reaction. She watched it again, this time with her eyes unfocused, the way her old photo teacher had taught her to look at contact sheets. Not searching for anything specific, but letting the image offer itself. She saw it at the 2-minute and 17-second mark, when in the background of the frame, past the gate, past Delroy, in the far corner of the facility's main parking lot, a man in a blue jacket was moving quickly. He was carrying something, a box, the kind with a fitted lid, the kind that sat in filing rooms, the kind that held documents. He was loading it into the back of an unmarked white truck. Petra leaned forward. She zoomed in until the image was grainy and soft, and even then she could see the shape of it clearly. And then she looked at the edges of the frame and found 2 more figures doing the same thing, moving in and out of shot, carrying boxes from a side door of the facility to a second vehicle parked alongside the first. They were removing files. During the confrontation, while every camera in that parking lot was pointed at the gate, Petra sat back in her chair. The tea had gone cold. Outside her window, the city was quiet and dark. She had thought the story was about 3 words and a fired man, and it wasn't. She pulled up the public records database she used for local government research and typed in 2 words: Hartwell. Incidents. The first result that came back was a routine facility report from 14 months ago. The second result was a worker fatality, male, age 34. The third result was another fatality, female, age 41. Petra stared at the screen for a long time. Then she reached for her phone. It was 11:12 at night, which was too late to call a stranger, but she had a feeling that the man in the gray jacket was not sleeping either. She searched his name. She found a work listing, then a county directory entry, then a phone number. She dialed. It rang twice. "Delroy Fitch," said a quiet voice on the other end. "Mr. Fitch," Petra said, sitting up straight, her voice steadier than she felt. "My name is Petra Okafor. I was at Hartwell this morning. I filmed the confrontation at the gate." A beat of silence. "When I know who you are," he said. "I saw your stream. I watched my footage again tonight," she said. "Mr. Fitch, I think I caught something on camera that nobody else noticed. There were people removing filing boxes from the facility during the confrontation. I got it on video." The silence that followed was different from the first one, heavier, like a breath being let out after being held for a very long time. "Tell me exactly what you saw," he said. "And start from the beginning." Petra looked at her screen, at the grainy, zoomed image of a man in a blue jacket loading a box into a truck while the world watched something else entirely. She started from the beginning. A man can prepare for a thing for weeks and still be surprised by how much it weighs when it finally arrives. Delroy Fitch, personal journal. The day after Delroy Fitch woke at 6:14 in the morning, as he had every working day for 22 years, and his hand reached for the badge on his nightstand before his eyes were fully open. His fingers found only the smooth wood surface of the stand. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling in the gray early light, while the previous day assembled itself in his mind the way mornings always assembled themselves, slowly then all at once. The gate, the motorcade, the 3 words, and Gerald Tibbs reading the termination letter in a flat voice while Delroy sat across from him in the small office that smelled of old carpet and stale coffee, holding his hands still in his lap the way his father had taught him to hold them when something was difficult. The plastic bag with his badge inside, the walk to the parking lot with a security escort who kept apologizing in a quiet, uncomfortable voice, as if the apology would make the walking easier. Delroy got up. He made coffee. He did these things in order and without rushing, the way he did everything. He took his mug, Nadia's mug, the one with the long joke printed on it, and sat at the kitchen table. Outside the window, the Nevada sky was doing what it always did in the early morning, going from the deep purple of night to the pale, washed-out orange of a desert dawn. It was the one thing about living out here that he had never gotten tired of. The sky was reliable. It did what it was going to do, regardless of what happened below it. He drank his coffee and did not look at his phone. He knew what the phone would show him. He had seen enough of it the night before. In the hour between Petra's call and the moment he finally made himself set the device face down on his dresser and lie down in the dark. 12 million views, his name trending in 4 countries. News segments he could not bring himself to watch for more than 30 seconds. So there were comments, hundreds of thousands of them, rolling past faster than anyone could read, calling him brave and stupid and a hero and a fool and a government plant and a martyr. All of these things simultaneously, the way the internet called everyone everything all at once until the words lost their meaning entirely. He was not any of those things, he thought. He was a man who had spent 8 months filing reports that no one acted on and had eventually run out of other options. When he poured a second cup of coffee, he thought about Marcus Webb. Marcus had worked the floor of the Hartwell facility for 3 years. He was 34 years old, younger than Nadia by almost 8 years when you thought about it that way, though Delroy tried not to think about it that way because it made his chest feel tight in a manner he did not have good words for. Marcus had a partner named Dolores and a son named Jalen, who had just turned 7. Delroy knew this not from the incident report, but from his own research, conducted on a Tuesday night in February with a cold cup of tea and a feeling of responsibility that he could not have explained to anyone, but could also not set down. Marcus had died when a crane arm on the main floor failed during a routine lift. The official incident report called it operator error. Note what the original inspection log, the one Delroy had recovered from the backup server, showed was that the crane's load sensor had flagged a structural fault warning 6 weeks before the accident. The warning had been logged, it had been reviewed, and then it had been removed from the record before the next quarterly safety audit. Someone had decided that fixing the crane was less convenient than removing the evidence that it needed fixing. Marcus Webb was dead because of that decision. When Delroy set his mug down carefully on the table, Inez Sandoval had worked in the materials testing wing. She was 41, a lead technician with 12 years of experience, the kind of worker that facilities like Hartwell depended on and underpaid in equal measure. She was described in an internal commendation from 3 years prior that Delroy had found in the Public Records Archive as methodical, thorough, and an example to newer staff. She had died on a Thursday morning in what was ruled a slip-and-fall accident in the west corridor of the testing wing. What the thermal imaging scan, commissioned by a floor supervisor and filed in the internal maintenance system before somehow disappearing from the official records, showed was that the drainage system beneath the west corridor floor had a significant fault. Water was pooling under the surface. The floor was compromised in a way that was invisible from above, but measurable from below. That same floor supervisor had submitted a repair request 5 months before Inez died. The request had been stamped, reviewed, and filed in a drawer that no one opened again. Inez Sandoval had slipped on a floor that everyone who was supposed to care already knew was dangerous. Delroy had read both files so many times that the details lived inside him now. One of the ways certain things did when you carried them long enough. He did not need to open the folder anymore to remember the dates or the names or the specific quiet language of forms and reports that had been designed to record the truth and then altered to hide it. He carried it. That was all. He had carried it for 8 months, and he would carry it for as long as it took for someone with the power to act to finally act. At 7:45, there was a soft knock at his front door, and he opened it to find his neighbor, a retired school teacher named Eunice Garland, who was 73 years old, small, and entirely without sentimentality. She was holding a covered dish. "I made too much casserole," she said. "Don't make it a thing." She handed him the dish and turned to go. "Eunice," he said. She looked back over her shoulder. "I saw the video," she said simply. "You did right." She walked back to her house. Delroy stood in his doorway for a moment with a warm casserole dish in his hands and the Nevada morning all around him, and something behind his eyes that he decided firmly was just the dry air. He went back inside. He ate. He sat at the table for a while with nothing to do, which was not a feeling he was accustomed to, and which settled over him like a coat that did not fit. Then at 8 o'clock, his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. Nevada area code. He had been half expecting a call from a reporter, or perhaps from Gerald Tibbs, who had looked genuinely miserable during the termination meeting, and might be the kind of man who called afterward to apologize for things that were not entirely his fault. He answered, "Mr. Fitch." A woman's voice, precise and calm, with an undertone of something that might have been controlled urgency. "My name is Petra Okafor. I'm a journalist. I filmed the incident at Hartwell yesterday morning." Delroy said nothing for a moment. He had known in a general way that this call would come from someone. He had hoped it would come from someone serious. The voice on the other end sounded serious. "I've been rewatching my footage," Petra said. "Mr. Fitch?" At the 2-minute 17-second mark, in the background of the frame, there are individuals removing filing boxes from the facility. At least 3 people, 2 vehicles. And it was happening during the confrontation at the gate. The silence that followed was the longest Delroy had allowed himself all morning. She found it, he thought. He had planned many things and left room for luck in others, and this was the part where he had most needed the luck. He had hoped that the confrontation, visible, viral, impossible to look away from, would pull every camera to the gate and leave the background of the frame unguarded. He had hoped that someone, somewhere, would eventually look at what had been happening in that background. He had not known it would happen this fast. He had not known it would be a young woman who drove 4 hours because an old records clerk sent her a text. "Tell me what you saw," he said. "Start from the beginning." He listened without interrupting while Petra described the footage. The man in the blue jacket, the filing boxes, the 2 vehicles, the side door of the facility through which the boxes had emerged. She described it methodically and precisely, and Delroy noted that her instinct was to report rather than interpret, which was a good instinct in a journalist and a rare one. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Fitch," Petra said, "I want to ask you something directly. Were you aware that was going to happen?" Delroy looked out his kitchen window. The sky was full orange now, the purple entirely gone. "I need to meet with you in person," he said. "There is a folder on my kitchen table. I would like to show it to you. A beat." "I can be there in 2 hours," Petra said. "I'll make more coffee," he said. "Being wrong is not the worst thing. Staying wrong after you have been shown otherwise, that is the worst thing." Juno Walsh, in a note she never sent, found later in her drafts folder, Elon Musk did not think about Delroy Fitch for the rest of that morning. This was not cruelty. It was the arithmetic of a schedule that did not allow for lingering. By the time his motorcade had cleared the Hartwell access road and rejoined the highway, his phone was already showing 14 unread messages, and his assistant had queued 3 calls that could not be pushed. The efficiency review moved on to its next location. The day moved on. By noon, he was 200 miles away, in a conference room in Carson City, looking at spreadsheets that had nothing to do with a gray-jacketed man standing in front of a gate. He had approved the communication statement his team drafted about the Hartwell incident without reading past the second paragraph. It said the right things in the right order. He initialed it and moved on. 3 words: a refusal, a termination. It had lasted less than 4 minutes at the gate, and it had felt, at the time, like a minor friction in a long day. The kind of small human obstacle that appeared occasionally when bureaucratic systems encountered the pace at which he preferred to operate. He had not been angry exactly. He had been impatient, which for him was a different and more habitual condition. He had meant what he said. That was simply true. In the moment, standing at that gate in the Nevada heat with 14 other things requiring his attention, the words had been the most efficient response available to him. Move or accept the consequence of not moving. It was not complicated. He had not known yet what the man at the gate had been protecting. Juno Walsh had worked for Elon for 14 months, which in his orbit was long enough to count as tenure. She was 26, slight, with close-cropped hair and the particular brand of quiet intelligence that did not announce itself until it had already finished thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Her official title was Research and Operations Coordinator, which covered in practice an enormous range of tasks that included scheduling, briefing preparation, real-time fact verification during meetings, and the part she was best at, and the part that had kept her in the job when others had not lasted. The ability to identify, quickly and without fanfare, when something that looked small was actually large. She had watched the Hartwell clip 3 times by 11 a.m., the first time as a member of the public, with 11 million other people, seeing what everyone else saw. The second time as a professional, noting the body language, the positioning, the sequence of events. The third time, and this was the viewing that changed things, with her attention deliberately pulled away from the center of the frame. She saw the background on the third pass, the men, the boxes, the truck. She spent the rest of the afternoon verifying what she had seen, because Juno did not bring things to Elon until she had enough to stand behind them. She ran the enhanced clip through a frame interpolation tool that sharpened the background detail. She cross-referenced the visible partial plate number on the second vehicle against Nevada commercial registration records. She found a logistics contractor named Sully Devers, whose company held 3 current service contracts with Hartwell. She found that Sully Devers had no scheduled service visit logged for that date. She pulled Delroy Fitch's professional record from the Federal Employee Directory. 22 years of service, no disciplinary history, A commendation from 11 years ago. Filed concerns. She could see the existence of filed concerns, though not the contents. Going back 8 months. 3 of them. None marked resolved. She looked at the commendation date, and then at the concerns, and then at the name of the Hartwell facility director, Raymond Holt. She wrote his name in the center of a blank document and began building outward from it. She knocked on Elon's office door at 7 in the evening. He was still at his desk, which was not unusual, and the desk was wide and covered in the particular organized chaos of a person who thought in several directions simultaneously. Printed schematics overlapping with printed reports, overlapping with a half-eaten energy bar and a coffee cup that had been empty for hours. He looked up. "You need to see something," Juno said. She was holding her tablet with both hands, the screen facing him. On it was a side-by-side, the original clip on the left, the enhanced background frame on the right. How did he watch both? He did not speak. "The men removing the boxes," Juno said, "are working for a logistics contractor with no scheduled visit that day. The contractor has ties to the facility director, Raymond Holt. The official who was terminated, Delroy Fitch, had filed 3 formal concerns about Hartwell in the last 8 months. None of them were resolved. Whilst there are 2 worker fatalities in the facility's recent history that I think are worth a much closer look." She set the tablet on the edge of his desk. "There's also a journalist," she said. "Petra Okafor. She filmed the original footage. She posted an enhanced version of the background clip 2 hours ago. It has 3 million views already, and it's moving fast." Elon said nothing for a long moment. He looked at the tablet. He looked at the window, which showed nothing but the dark Nevada night and his own faint reflection in the glass. He was thinking about the man at the gate, about the way Delroy Fitch had stood there. Not with the puffed-up defiance of someone performing resistance, but with the flat, unmovable calm of someone who had already decided that the personal cost of moving was higher than the personal cost of staying. Elon had met many people who said they would not be moved. He had met very few who actually weren't. He was not using paperwork as a wall. He was using himself as one. The understanding arrived without drama, the way real understanding usually did, quietly and slightly too late. "Get me the full safety record for Hartwell," he said. 2 years. Get me the original incident reports for both fatalities. Not the filed versions, the originals if they exist. And get me a direct line to the Federal Inspector General's office. Tonight if possible. First thing tomorrow if not." Juno nodded once and turned to go. "Juno," he said. She stopped. "Who was he?" Elon asked. "Fitch. Before today." Juno looked at her notes. "A compliance officer," she said. 22 years. Filed accurate reports that no one acted on. No prior complaints. No disciplinary record. By every measure," she paused slightly, "exactly the kind of person the system is supposed to produce and almost never does." She left. Elon sat in his quiet office for a while after she was gone. The empty coffee cup sat at the edge of his vision. Outside, the Nevada dark was the kind of deep and total that only happened far from cities. He thought about the 3 words he had said. He thought about how certain he had been when he said them. He thought about how certainty and correctness were 2 entirely different things, and how the distance between them was sometimes only visible in the rearview mirror. When it was already too late to go back and say something different. He owed a man in a gray jacket a phone call. He picked up his phone and asked Juno to find a number. Evidence is just memory with receipts. The hard part is finding someone willing to read them. Celeste Dre, attorney, opening remarks to federal investigators. Petra arrived at Delroy's house at 10 past 10 in the morning. Whom was still wearing the same jacket she had driven home in the night before, and carrying a canvas bag that held her laptop, 2 voice recorders, and a backup phone battery that she never went anywhere without. The house was small and neat, set back from the road behind a square of pale grass that was doing its modest best against the Nevada heat. There were 2 ceramic pots on the front step with succulents in them. The front door was already open before she reached it. Delroy was standing in the doorway. He was wearing a plain gray shirt and dark trousers, and he looked in person both exactly like the man in the footage and somehow smaller than him, the way people often did when you met them after watching them do something large. He had a mug in one hand. He looked her over once. the way a careful person assessed a new situation, and then stepped back to let her in. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for letting me," Petra said. And the kitchen was clean and quiet. There was a second mug waiting on the table, already filled. Between the two chairs in the center of the table sat a manila folder. It was not thick, perhaps 30 or 40 pages, but it had the particular density of something that had been handled many times, its edges soft with use, its cover marked with careful handwriting. 2 names, Marcus Webb, Inez Sandoval. Petra set her bag down and sat. She did not reach for the folder. She waited. "Sure, how long have you had them?" she asked. "The full file?" 6 months, Delroy said. He sat across from her, both hands around his mug. "I kept adding to it as I found things. Each time I found something new, I submitted a formal report through the proper channels. Each time, nothing happened." "How many reports?" 3 official filings, 1 letter to the Inspector General's office, 2 follow-up calls. In 1 direct conversation with Raymond Holt, he said the name the way you said the name of a thing you had looked at too long and too closely. "Holt told me to make sure my sources were reliable before making claims officially." "What did you say?" "I said thank you and hung up." Petra looked at the folder. "May I?" she asked. He nodded. She opened it carefully, the way you opened something that had cost someone something to put together. And inside, the documents were organized with the thoroughness of a man who had spent 22 years understanding exactly how evidence needed to be structured to be useful. At the front was a typed summary, 1 page, single-spaced, laying out the timeline of both fatalities and the specific discrepancies Delroy had found in the filed records versus the originals. Behind it came the documents themselves, each group separated by a colored tab. The first group concerned Marcus Webb. Original inspection log, Crane Unit 7, Hartwell main floor, structural fault warning flagged, 14 weeks prior to incident. Status, logged and reviewed, repair order, issued, repair order, deferred, twice. Final status in official record, removed. Petra read the line twice. Then she read the copy of the original log, the backup version Delroy had recovered from a server that had not yet been scrubbed, and then the filed version, side by side, and saw with her own eyes where the fault warning had been, where it was not. Someone had reached into the record of a man's death and removed the sentence that explained it. She turned to the second tab. The second group concerned Inez Sandoval. Thermal imaging scan, West Corridor, Hartwell testing wing. Drainage fault identified, significant. Floor integrity, compromised. Commissioned by floor supervisor Augusto Reyna. Filed internal maintenance system, March. Maintenance request submitted, same date. Request status in official record, reviewed. Repair status, no entry. Scan status, no entry. Both documents, absent from official archive. Petra sat with that for a moment. "Absent from official archive," she said quietly, not a question. "I found them in a backup partition," Delroy said. "The facility uses a document management system that auto-archives everything before the manual delete function can reach it. Whoever removed the files from the main record didn't know about the partition, or didn't think anyone would look for it." "How did you know to look for it?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I have been doing this work for 22 years, he said, "and I have learned that when a record looks too clean, it usually means someone cleaned it." At the back of the folder, behind the tab sections, was a thin sheaf of printed emails. Petra turned to them last and felt the air in the room shift slightly when she read the first one. When the emails were internal communications between Raymond Holt and a man named Conrad Beal, who held the title of Director of Facility Risk Assessment for the federal oversight body that supervised Hartwell. They were dated across a period of 4 months. The language in them was careful. The language of men who wrote as if they knew they might one day be read by someone they had not intended. TOER RE, documentation alignment. Recommend we ensure consistency across the incident record before the next audit cycle. The current discrepancies, if surfaced externally, could complicate the renewal process significantly. ERE, EFUD, Q3 compliance submission. Art agreed. The adjustments to the web report have been completed on our end. The Sandoval documentation is pending. I'll confirm once the archive reflects the corrected version. Adjustments. That was the word they used. How not falsification, not deletion, not concealment of evidence in 2 workplace deaths that had left behind 2 families and 7 children between them? Adjustments. Petra realized she had stopped breathing normally at some point in the last few minutes. She set the emails down with deliberate care and looked across the table at Delroy Fitch, who was watching her read with the expression of a man who had been waiting a long time for someone to look at something the right way. Marcus Webb had a son, Delroy said quietly. Jalen. He's 7 years old. Started 1st grade this year. Petra's throat tightened. Inez Sandoval had 3 children, he continued. The youngest was 4 when she died. Her name is Rosario. They sat in the quiet kitchen for a moment. Outside, a car passed slowly on the road. The succulents on the front steps sat in their pots in the morning sun, patient and enduring. What do you need from me? Petra said. I need this to be somewhere it cannot be quietly shelved, Delroy said. The way everything else I filed was shelved. I need it in a form that cannot disappear. Petra looked at the folder, at the 2 names on the cover, at the 30 pages inside that represented 8 months of a careful man's careful work, submitted through every correct channel and ignored through every one of them. She thought about Bet's text. Couldn't pay attention. She thought about the grainy image of a man in a blue jacket loading a box into a truck while the world watched something else. She thought about Jalen Webb in 1st grade and Rosario Sandoval, who had been 4 years old when her mother did not come home. I'll make sure, Petra said. She reached into her canvas bag and took out both voice recorders. She set them side by side on the table between the 2 mugs and the folder with the 2 names on it. Tell me everything, she said, from the beginning. I want all of it. Delroy looked at the recorders. Then he looked at her. Then he nodded once with the slow, certain movement of a man who had been waiting 8 months for exactly this moment, and began. There are words that leave your mouth one way and arrive somewhere else entirely. The only honest thing you can do then is acknowledge the distance. Elon Musk, internal memo, never published. The call came at 9:31 in the morning, 2 days after the firing. Delroy was on his back porch when his phone buzzed against the patio table. Petra had left an hour ago, taking with her the recordings, photographs of every page in the folder, and 2 USB drives onto which Delroy had copied the backup files from the partition server. The recorders had run for 4 hours and 12 minutes. He had told her everything, went from the first discrepancy in October to the call with Raymond Holt, to the night he dialed Celeste Dre, and used the word hypothetically in a way that both of them understood was not hypothetical at all. Now the porch was quiet. A red-tailed hawk was working a slow circle above the dry hills to the east, riding the same thermal it rode most mornings, patient and unhurried. Delroy had a mug of tea that had gone cold without him noticing. He was not thinking about anything in particular, which was unusual for him and which he was, cautiously, allowing himself to do. He looked at the screen. Unknown number, Texas area code. He knew before he answered. He answered anyway. Delroy Fitch? The voice was familiar from 100 news clips and public appearances and the 4 minutes at the gate 2 mornings ago. It sounded different on the phone, smaller somehow, and more careful. Yes, Delroy said. A pause. Not the pause of a man who did not know what to say, but the pause of a man choosing precisely how to say what he had already decided. This is Elon Musk. Delroy said nothing. He looked at the hawk. It completed its circle and began another. I owe you an apology, Elon said. Of all the ways the sentence could have begun, that was not the one Delroy had prepared for. He felt something shift slightly in his chest. Not softening exactly, but a loosening of something he had been holding tightly without quite realizing it. I told you to move or resign, Elon continued. I believed you were bureaucratic obstruction. I was wrong about your reasons for standing there, and I want to be direct about that rather than let it sit. Yes, Delroy said, you were. The directness of it landed between them without softening. He had not said it to wound. He had said it because it was accurate, and accuracy was the only language Delroy had ever been fully comfortable in. Another pause. This one sat differently. Elon Musk, or Delroy suspected, was a man who moved quickly through most silences, filling them before they could settle. This one he left alone. I've reviewed the Hartwell safety records, Elon said. My team has identified the background footage from the journalist clip and traced the contractor involved. I've placed a call to the Inspector General's office this morning and requested an immediate formal review. I've also requested the original incident documentation for Marcus Webb and Inez Sandoval. Delroy closed his eyes for just a moment. 8 months, 3 reports, 1 letter, 2 calls, a conversation with a man whose voice stayed soft even when he was threatening you, a termination letter in a plastic bag on Gerald Tibbs's desk, and now from a back porch in Nevada, with a cold cup of tea and a hawk overhead, it was finally moving. Thank you, Delroy said. I want to ask you something, Elon said, and I want you to answer me directly if you're willing. Did you plan the confrontation at the gate? Did you know before that morning that the files were going to be removed? Delroy considered the question. He had expected it from Petra. He had expected it from his attorney. He had not quite expected it from this man, delivered this plainly, without any softening architecture around it. He decided he respected that. I planned to stand at the gate and not move, he said. I planned to be fired. I knew that a public termination, in front of cameras connected to someone with your level of visibility, would create enough noise to force a look at what I had been trying to make people look at for 8 months. And the file removal? I suspected it would happen, Delroy said. Holt knew the inspection was coming. Men like Holt clean up before company arrives. I did not know exactly when or how. I did not plan on a journalist with 11 million viewers catching it in the background of her live stream. That part was not me. No, Elon said. That part was her paying attention. Yes, Delroy said. It was. The hawk had stopped circling. While Delroy watched, it folded its wings and dropped in a long, fast arc toward the hillside and disappeared below the ridgeline. Gone in an instant, after all that patient turning. Your termination is being reviewed, Elon said. I can't determine the outcome. That's not within my authority in this specific situation, but I've formally requested that the circumstances be reconsidered in light of what's been found. I want you to know that. Delroy looked at the empty sky where the hawk had been. Thank you, he said, but I want to be honest with you about something in return. Go ahead. My job was not why I did it. I liked my job. I would like to have it back. But if I had to choose between having it back and making sure that what happened to Marcus Webb and Inez Sandoval is properly investigated and their families are told the truth, that is not a difficult choice for me. The silence on the line was the longest yet. When Elon spoke again, his voice had something in it that had not been there before. Not softness exactly. Something more specific than that. I understand, he said. And the way he said it, quiet, without qualifier, and without the mechanical efficiency that usually ran underneath his words like a current, made Delroy believe that he actually did. One more thing, Elon said. The 3 words. I need you to know that I meant them the way a man says something when he hasn't been given enough information to know what he's actually saying. Delroy thought about the voice recorder in his jacket pocket that morning, and about Celeste Dre, who had told him, get him to say something on record, not as a trap, as evidence of the authority being wielded, something that proves you were standing in the way of a lawful protective action under federal oversight guidelines. Move or resign, said on federal grounds, said to a compliance officer engaged in a protected activity, said in front of 12 million witnesses who had no idea they were witnessing anything other than impatience. Delroy had known when he heard those 3 words that the morning had gone exactly as it needed to. To whom I know, Delroy said simply, I believe you. And then, because it was true and because he had spent his whole life saying things that were true even when they were not easy, thank you for calling. He heard what might have been a short exhale on the other end. Then, take care of yourself, Mr. Fitch. The call ended. Delroy set the phone down on the patio table next to his cold tea. So he sat for a long time in the quiet morning, with the empty sky above the hills, and the specific stillness of a man who has done a hard thing and is now slowly beginning to believe it might have worked. He did not cry. He came close. My father never asked anyone to think he was brave. He just kept doing the thing until the thing was done. That's the only kind of brave that actually counts. Nadia Fitch, commencement address, Seattle School of Law. The following year, Nadia called that Sunday, as she always did, a few minutes before 9. Delroy was still at the kitchen table. He had been there most of the morning, not doing anything in particular. Reading, then not reading, then watching the light move across the floor tiles the way it did when the clouds came and went. The folder was still on the table. He had not put it away yet. He was not sure why. Perhaps because putting it away felt like a kind of ending, and he was not ready to decide what it was the ending of. And he answered on the first ring. "Dad." Her voice was tight in the way it got when she was trying not to show something. He had known that voice since she was 12 years old. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," he said. "Dad, you are globally trending. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand the word," he said. She made a sound that was halfway between a laugh and something else. "People are calling you a hero," she said. "Other people are calling you reckless. There's a Twitter thread, X, whatever, that's convinced this was staged by 3 different governments simultaneously. Dad, you lost your job. You lost your pension. After 22 years. Do you understand what you actually lost?" He did understand. He had sat with it quietly over the past 2 days. The pension was 15 years away from being full, but it was something. The health coverage would run out at the end of the month. He had savings. Ironic, but savings were a river with no rain coming. They only went one direction. And Nadia's tuition, which he helped with every semester, which she never asked him to help with and never asked him to stop. "I understand," he said. "Then tell me it was worth it," she said. "Say it out loud so I can hear what it sounds like." He thought about how to answer that, not because he did not know the answer, but because Nadia deserved the real one, not the short version. "Inra, there is a boy named Jalen Webb," he said. "He's 7 years old. He started first grade this year. His father died in a workplace accident 14 months ago. The official record says it was operator error. It was not. Someone removed the warning from the crane inspection report 6 weeks before the accident, and his father went to work on a Monday morning and operated machinery that had already told its supervisors it was going to fail." Nadia was quiet. "Jalen Webb is going to grow up," Delroy continued, "and at some point, maybe when he's 12, maybe when he's 20, maybe when he has children of his own, he's going to want to understand what happened to his father. He's going to look for the truth of it, and because of what happened this week, there is a chance, not a certainty, but a real chance, that the truth will be there for him to find. One that it won't be buried under a report that was adjusted by men who thought no one was looking. There is also a girl named Rosario Sandoval," he said. "She was 4 years old when her mother didn't come home from work. She is 5 now. She's going to grow up too." The silence on the line stretched long enough that he checked the phone screen to make sure the call was still connected. It was. "Dad," Nadia said finally. Her voice had changed. The tight, controlled quality was gone. What was underneath it was quieter and more open. "Why didn't you tell me? When you were filing the reports, when nothing was happening, why did you carry all of that by yourself?" Delroy looked at the folder on the table. "Because you were in school," he said, "and because I didn't want you to worry about something I hadn't finished yet." "You could have told me," she said softly. "I know," he said. "I'm telling you now." She was quiet for another moment. Then, "I'm flying out this weekend." "Nadia, you don't need to do that. You have finals coming up. I have reading weeks," she said. "I'm coming. Don't argue with me. I got it from you." He smiled at that. It arrived on his face before he decided to let it, which was, he reflected, the best kind of smile. "You're going to make a very good lawyer," he said. "I learned from the best," she said. Then, after a pause that held something fragile in it, "The most stubborn person I've ever met." "You told me that was a compliment." "It still is." After the call ended, Delroy sat for a while in the kitchen with the folder and the quiet and the Sunday morning light coming sideways through the window. When he thought about what things cost and what things were worth, and how those two calculations were almost never the same number, and how the gap between them was where most of the important decisions in a life lived. He thought about his father Rupert, who had fixed engines in a garage for 31 years, and who had told him once, when Delroy was 8 years old, and had just told a hard truth at school that cost him a friendship. "Son, the right thing is almost never the easy thing. But you will always know which one you did, and you will have to live with knowing. Make sure you can live with it comfortably. He had lived with this comfortably. He picked up his mug and found that his coffee had gone cold again, without him noticing, as it had every morning this week, which was, he thought, simply a consequence of having too many things worth thinking about. He got up and poured it out and made a fresh cup. Then he sat back down at the table and waited for his daughter to come home. Justice does not arrive the way lightning does, sudden and complete and impossible to miss. It arrives the way a tide does. You do not see it moving, and then one morning you look down and everything has changed. Petra Okafor, 2 names, Marcus and Ines. Episode 6, To Closing Words. The federal investigation into Hartwell Regional Manufacturing Hub opened 14 days after Delroy Fitch stood at the gate in the Nevada heat and said 2 words that no one in that parking lot expected. You cannot enter. It did not open the way investigations opened in movies, with raids and flashing lights and men in windbreakers. It opened the way real investigations opened, with paperwork. A formal notice of inquiry filed by the Office of the Inspector General, assigned to a senior investigator named Theodora Vance, who had spent 19 years doing exactly this kind of work, and who read Delroy's folder on a Thursday afternoon and did not look up from it until she had read every page twice. After that, things began to move. Not everything moved at once. That was important to understand, and it was the part that Petra tried to explain in the first episode of her audio series. That justice, when it came unevenly and in pieces, and that watching it arrive required the same stubborn patience that had allowed one quiet man to stand at a gate and not move. But it did move, and it moved in ways that could be tracked. Day 14, federal investigation formally open. Inspector Theodora Vance assigned. Delroy's folder accepted as primary evidentiary submission. Day 15, Raymond Holt placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His attorney releases a statement. It reaches paragraph 2 before the family's attorneys release their own. Day 17, Conrad Beal, Director of Facility Risk Assessment, resigns. His letter cites health reasons. Federal investigators politely inform him that resignation does not affect his obligation to testify. Day 19. Sully Devers, the logistics contractor captured in Petra's background footage loading filing boxes into an unmarked truck, is formally identified. A Hartwell floor worker named Augusto Reyna, the same supervisor who had filed the original maintenance request for Ines Sandoval's corridor, provides a witness statement. He had seen the file removal happen. He had been waiting for someone to ask. Day 23, Celeste Dre files the wrongful termination suit on Delroy's behalf. At its center, a voice recording. 3 words spoken on federal grounds to a compliance officer engaged in a protected oversight action. The recording is 41 seconds long. It is, Celeste tells Delroy on the phone that evening, exactly what they need. Day 31, Petra's 4,000-word feature story publishes. The headline reads, 2 names. The subheading reads, How a fired compliance officer, a freelance journalist, and a background detail in a viral video broke open 2 years of concealed workplace deaths. The files that Sully Devers had loaded into the unmarked truck were not recovered intact. Some had been shredded within hours of being removed from the facility. Some existed only in pieces, identifiable by header and date, but incomplete in their content. It did not matter as much as Holt had hoped. Delroy's backup copies, scanned, organized, time-stamped, stored on 2 separate hard drives that he had kept in a fireproof box under his bed for 6 months and handed directly to Theodora Vance on the first day of the investigation, filled every gap that mattered. The ones with names. The ones with dates. The ones with the quiet, bureaucratic language of men who had believed they were untouchable right up until the moment they were not. Augusto Reyna's witness statement filled the rest. He had submitted that original maintenance request for the West Corridor drainage fault. He had watched it get stamped and filed and never acted on. He had watched Ines Sandoval walk that corridor every day for 5 months and had felt every one of those days, the particular low-level dread of a person who knows something is wrong and does not yet know what to do about it. He had been trying to find the right person to tell for 8 months. He had not known about Delroy. Delroy had not known about him. They met for the first time in Theodore Vance's office on day 21 of the investigation, shook hands without speaking, and then both looked away at the same time, the way people did when an emotion arrived that they had not prepared space for. Petra published the feature, then the documentary, then the audio series. She named the series two names, Marcus and Inez. 6 episodes, 42 minutes each. She interviewed Delroy, Augusto, Celeste, Theodora Vance after the investigation had concluded, and, in the final episode, quietly and with great care, Dolores Webb, who was Marcus's partner, and who had spent 14 months believing the official version of her husband's death. When Dolores Webb sat across from Petra in a small living room in Reno with a photograph of Marcus on the bookshelf behind her, and spoke for 40 minutes without stopping. Her voice did not shake. She had, she said, done all her shaking already. Now she wanted people to hear it clearly. The series won 3 awards in its first year. Petra gave the first one, a small glass thing that caught the light in a particular way, to Bet Marsh, Honey, who had sent a text message late on a Tuesday night that said, "Pay attention." Bet put it on her windowsill. She did not make a fuss about it. She said it was just nice to know that someone had. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand somewhere and refuse to move. Delroy Fitch, in a card to his daughter Nadia, the spring she graduated law school. There is one thing about the morning at the Hartwell Gate that nobody understood correctly for a long time. And not the 12 million viewers, not the commentators who filled 24 hours of cable television with opinions formed in the first 90 seconds. Not the reporters who wrote their pieces by noon and published them by 2. Not even Petra Okafor, who was paying closer attention than anyone, and who still, in the first days after, believed she understood the full shape of what had happened. She did not yet. The part that was missing was this. The night before the confrontation, Delroy Fitch could not sleep. This was not unusual. He had not slept well in weeks. But that night, the Tuesday night before Elon's motorcade rolled down Route 9, he was awake for a specific reason. He was in his kitchen with his laptop open and his phone beside him, and he was listening. The Hartwell facility used an external communications management system, a vendor platform that routed scheduling calls, contractor logistics, and visitor coordination through a shared radio frequency relay. It was a system Delroy had flagged 3 years ago as a security vulnerability in a routine audit. His recommendation, that the relay frequency be encrypted and access restricted, had been filed, reviewed, and not acted on. Raymond Holt's office was still broadcasting on an open channel. Delroy had known about it for 3 years. He had never used that knowledge. Until Tuesday night, when he put on a pair of headphones, tuned to the frequency, and listened to 2 men plan a distraction. Holt's voice low and unhurried. "We need something at the gate, something that gives us 40 minutes on the inside without eyes on the lot. Can your people be ready?" A second voice, Conrad Beal. Delroy recognized it from the one phone call they had shared. "They can be ready, but what's the distraction?" Holt again. "We'll find someone to cause a delay at the entrance. A procedural hold. Something legitimate looking that puts Musk at the gate long enough for the boxes to move. 40 minutes is all we need." Delroy sat at his kitchen table with his headphones on and heard the shape of what Holt intended. A staged delay at the gate. Someone playing the part of the obstacle while the real business happened behind them. They were going to use somebody, he thought. A person, a face, someone they could sacrifice at the front while they cleaned out the back. He had sat with that for a long time, and then slowly, with the cold precision of a man who had spent 22 years understanding exactly how systems worked and how they failed, he had understood what he needed to do. Holt was going to create a distraction. Delroy was going to be that distraction, but not Holt's version of it, not some procedural delay that would be forgotten in a week. His version, one that would be impossible to bury, impossible to explain away, and impossible to keep out of the public record. And he was going to stand at the gate himself, not as Holt's pawn, as the opposite of Holt's pawn. He was going to stand there in full view of every camera in that parking lot and make the most visible, undeniable scene he could, so that while Holt's men worked in the background, they were also, inevitably, inescapably, in the background of the same cameras. He had called Celeste Dre that night and told her to be ready. He had asked her one specific question. What did he need to capture? She on record to make the wrongful termination case airtight? Her answer had been exact. Get whoever fires you to say something on federal grounds that demonstrates the authority being used against you. A direct order, on record, in a situation where a reasonable person would recognize you were engaged in protected oversight activity. He had nodded at the phone in the dark of his kitchen. He had gone to his bedroom and found the small voice recorder in the drawer of his nightstand, the one he used for compliance walkthroughs when he did not want to type notes. He had checked the battery. He had slipped it into the inside pocket of his gray jacket. He had set his alarm for 5:30 and gone to bed and slept. Finally, with the uncomplicated depth of a man who had made his decision and was done deliberating. At the gate the next morning, during when Elon Musk looked at him and said 3 words, "Move or resign." Those words traveled across the open air of the Hartwell parking lot, past 41 cameras and 312 live stream viewers who would become 12 million, and into the microphone of a small voice recorder in the inside pocket of a gray jacket. 41 seconds of audio. 3 words that meant, under federal oversight law, exactly what Celeste Dre had told Delroy they would mean. A direct order, by a figure-wielding federal authority, issued to a compliance officer on federal grounds in the active performance of a protected action. The wrongful termination suit settled 11 months later. Delroy Fitch did not return to his old job. He was offered it back. He thanked Gerald Tibbs, who had called personally and who sounded genuinely relieved. Then he declined. He took a position instead with the Federal Workplace Safety Accountability Project, a nonprofit established in the aftermath of the Hartwell investigation, dedicated to protecting whistleblowers in federal and federally contracted facilities and ensuring that the kinds of reports Delroy had filed for 8 months could never again be shelved in silence. The organization was funded by several sources. One of them, quiet and listed third on the donor page without fanfare, was a personal contribution from Elon Musk. The press release that accompanied the organization's launch said only that he was proud to support work that kept the right people, the ones who checked, who flagged, who stood at gates and refused to move, inside the system rather than cast out of it. Petra Okafor covered the launch. She had covered everything, from the first feature to the final settlement to the founding of the nonprofit. She was not freelance anymore. She had 3 job offers the week after the audio series concluded, and had taken the one that gave her the most independence and the least interference. She was, her old editor told her in a text she read on the morning of the launch, exactly the journalist he had always known she could be. She wrote back, "I just paid attention." Nadia Fitch graduated law school the following spring. She walked across the stage in Seattle on a Saturday morning in May, in a black robe and flat shoes, because she had decided that a 6-hour ceremony was not the moment for heels, and found her father in the crowd by his posture alone, straight-backed, still, watching her with the expression he always had when he was proud of something and did not know what to do with the feeling. At the graduation dinner that evening, at a small Italian restaurant that Nadia had chosen because it had no televisions and no one would recognize her father, Delroy gave her a card. It was a plain white envelope with her name on it in his careful handwriting. She opened it. Inside was a single index card. On it, in the same careful hand, were 2 sentences. "Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand somewhere and refuse to move." Nadia looked at the card for a long time. Then she looked at her father across the table. "Is this about the gate?" she asked. "It's about everything," he said. She tucked the card back into the envelope. She put the envelope in her jacket pocket close to her chest. She still has it. On the windowsill of her office in the law firm she joined 2 years later, there is a small frame photograph. It was taken by a security camera at the Hartwell facility gate, printed from the publicly released investigation archive. It shows a small man in a gray jacket standing in the center of an entrance, very still, with everything that matters to him behind him and everything he is willing to lose in front of him. Her clients sometimes ask about it. She always tells them the same thing. "That's my father. He stood somewhere and refused to move. It cost him everything he had built for 22 years, and it was the right thing to do." Those 2 facts are both completely true at the same time, And learning to hold them both without letting one cancel the other is the most important thing I know. Then she gets back to work, because there is always more work, and because, as a man named Delroy Fitch understood from the time he was a boy reading footnotes in a classroom in Reno, the work is the thing, the careful, quiet, invisible, essential work of making sure that the things which are supposed to be checked get checked. And that is the story of one quiet man in a gray jacket who stood at a gate, refused to move, and changed everything for two families who had been waiting a very long time for the truth. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and it never gets old seeing how far this community reaches. Whether you are watching from New York or Nigeria, from London or the Philippines, or from a small town nobody has heard of or a city everybody knows, say hello. I want to know you are there. If this story moved you, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it does more than you think. Every like tells the algorithm that stories like this one, stories about ordinary people who do extraordinary things for the right reasons, are worth spreading. And they are. The world needs more of them. And if you believe that kindness is worth sharing, why, if you believe that the people who quietly do the right thing deserve to be seen and celebrated, subscribe to this channel. Join this community, because that is exactly what we are building here, one story at a time. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now. There is another story waiting for you, and I promise it is worth your time. I will see you there.